So people will be slowly wandering in, but I wanted to just find out how's it going, questions, comments, anything you've observed about yourself or your experience. Yes.
I notice like even when times where I'm not like setting aside time to sit down and meditate, like if I'm walking somewhere or doing another activity, I find myself noticing more things about what I'm doing, like about my body and how it's
Right.
like I guess feeling in relation to what action I'm doing.
Great.
Is nice.
Yeah, it's a natural part of the process. What you're learning is awareness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a heightened sense of awareness. So that's very good. You'll learn more about a heightened sense of awareness about emotions today. Anybody else? Good or bad? Yes?
Kind of with all of this focus on the body, I found myself kind of wishing we could, like in the practice, wishing like we could be focusing on the emotion.
Yeah.
Like noticing the emotion and like recognizing that it was
Right.
related to emotion, like a certain sensation,
Yes.
and kind of wishing I knew how to deal with it.
Yes. Well, that's what we're going to do today. You know, and clearly, as you could see, that emotions, as we'll talk about, are expressed in the body. Sometimes they're very subtle, but all emotions have a kind of a relationship to body sensations. And so one of the reasons why we start by kind of really getting in touch with our body, and this is what I was having you do this week, is so that as we start to talk about emotions, and if I say, okay, so how does this emotion express yourself in your body? If you're totally out of touch with your body, you'll go, I don't know. I never thought about it. But as you kind of really get embodied and really kind of understand what's going on internally, this becomes a lot easier, and you'll understand why more today as we talk about emotions. Anybody else? Your experiences? Anything you noticed about yourself? Did you notice that the mind is preoccupied with thinking or anything? Yes.
I've noticed that, like, sort of at the end of it, I'll do like I'll stay sort of in the position and kind of try to like release the focus.
Right.
And that tends to be the time when I have the most clarity.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I guess I probably get to a state where I'm trying too hard to focus on the
Right.
sensation or whatever it is. And then when I ease that up and say, okay, just don't try to focus on anything, suddenly my mind
It's
goes
clear.
free,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Like I don't need to think anymore.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
You know, and so.
So trying to just, you know, dial back the
Yeah.
intensity of the focus.
Yeah.
So that I can.
So it's a very interesting thing, you know. We when we relax, you know, we get this clarity, and then but a lot of times you need a reference point to see what's going on, and so you look inside the meditation, you see, ooh, you know, when I'm doing this is what's going on, and then when I relax afterwards, you know, I have this clarity. But knowing that, you might then say the next time you do a sitting, like say, well, maybe I can. What would that be like if during my sit I just decided just to be a little bit more relaxed with that? But, you know, this is something that we'll learn, and this is something that you're just starting to see the edges of this. And so as we go forward, you know, the next couple of weeks, you'll see more and more of how this all is fitting together. And so, is there any other questions before we begin? Okay. So I thought what we'd do is we just start off with a meditation. And we're going to do a couple of meditations today because I want to do a meditation that kind of gets you into the kind of like just noticing things. And then I'm going to explain emotions. And we're going to explain about how mindfulness deals with emotions. And then I'm going to take you through an exercise so that you can, a couple of exercises, so that you can kind of see how it works. Because one thing I recognize typically is when I talk about emotions, people come in the class, they have all these emotions, and then when I say, okay, let's focus on your emotions, nobody has any emotions anymore. So I have to kind of like help you to kind of like show you the process. So why don't we just start by, we'll just do a guided meditation, and we'll do this really simply. We're just going to take a posture, and as I always say, try to take a conscious posture. And what we're going to try to do with our posture, and so I'm going to be more serious about this as we're kind of moving forward, is to think of what I'm asking you to do is to be present and relaxed for all of these body sensations, for these emotions and these thinking. So what would your body be like if it was really present and relaxed at the same time? And that's really what you want to do. We're trying to unify our experience. This is what kind of keeps us from being all scattered and out of balance and all that. So we're thinking about unifying. So the posture that I'm going to do, by taking a posture that is kind of clear and upright as best as I can, is really to bring out that emphasis on presence and alertness. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to scan my body. We'll start at the top of the head to try to relax all of those muscles, all that tension that is not necessary for keeping the body erect. And this way we're going to bring out that other quality, not only the alertness, but now the relaxation. So look around your eyes, and your cheekbones, and your cheeks, and your mouth, and the jaw, and just notice if there's any tension there. Just notice whatever you have there. And if you've noticed any tension, see if you can soften and relax that tension. You can do it just with your intentions, by noticing the tension. You can use the out-breath. Each time you breathe out, just see if you can relax tensions in the face. Then bringing your attention to your neck, the shoulders and shoulder blades, down the arms, the elbows, all the way down to the fingers and the hands. Again, just releasing and softening any tension you find in your arms, hands, and face, the shoulders, the shoulder blades, softening the belly, down through legs, thighs, calves, shins, all the way, knees, down to your toes, feet. Anytime you find tension that is extra, not necessary for sitting upright, again, see if you can relax that. So when you feel like you've gotten into a position where you're awake, alert, present, and maybe the body is also relaxed, open and receptive. Following the sensations of the breath, and breathe in and breathe out, with that same quality of awareness of being present and relaxed. But now we're bringing it to the object of meditation, which is breath. And again, as usual, our attention will wander away. And once again, with this quality of awareness of being present and relaxed, we notice that our attention has wandered away, and then without all judgment and commentary, but more in a relaxed way, we simply just return our attention back to the breath. So it's in this way that we're practicing over and over and over again, simply being present and relaxed for our experiences. And once again, as we're doing this, we're having body sensations and emotions and thinking that will come into your awareness from time to time. And for now, all we have to do is just kind of mentally label them as this is sadness or this is frustration. Just label it. Let it be. If it's thinking, you can just say, this is thinking. And then if it's not challenging for you, your attention will naturally drop back to the object of meditation, which here is just the breath. So also reminding you once again, a lot of people try to make this very complicated, just natural. Try to make this a very complicated exercise. But what I'd like you to do is just think of this as very simple. Very simple. Being present and relaxed for whatever experiences you have, whether they're positive or even negative, maybe even neutral. It's the same quality of awareness, present and relaxed. Okay, so now just take a couple of deep breaths, and then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Right. Okay. So, room is so quiet, it's nice. When I teach in the class before, I'm right over at the another part of the campus, and there's a big construction going on the whole time. And so people sit there and they really get to experience listening meditation. Here we just hear the hums of the room. And so, again, any questions before we move on to emotions at all? Yes.
When thinking about the breath, I felt myself sort of imagining it as something else,
Mm-hmm.
maybe something flowing, or like grass blowing in the wind or something. Is that good or bad? Should I focus more on the sensation of breath, or is it okay to sort of abstract it a little bit?
This is a very good question. What you want to do is be present for what's going on. And so the reason why we tend to like put our attention on the sensations of the breath is because kind of by definition, those are in the present moment. So some people, what they do is they'll bring, like have an image like you're doing. If you know that this image is going to stay in the present moment and not kick you out into some fantasy land, then it'd be fine. Some people have a hard time doing that because they bring up this image, and the image immediately kind of cascades into something else, and they think they're in the present moment, but they're not. They're actually into the future. They're in some fantasy that they've kind of constructed. So you can play with this. You can play with it. You know, you might play with the idea of kind of like saying, okay, I'm going to just see the entire breath and the sensations, and then bring that image on top of that, kind of like in a sense reinforcing that kind of sensation of staying with these kind of these sensations of breathing in and breathing out. And some people find that really helpful, because instead of like they'll actually go and they'll say, oh, I'm going to start my attention on the breath is going to start at the nose. I feel the air coming in. I feel it going all the way down. And then so they would say, oh, it's have a very flowing kind of experience, but it's all within the context of the sensations. Okay? So the easy answer for a lot of these things is always the same. You want to be present, and then the relaxed, as I've been saying, when you're making judgments, when you're making comments, when you're trying to fix things, all that takes energy. To be relaxed is to let go of all of those things and just be open and receptive. Okay? So one of the things that we need to think about then, which we're going to do today, is our emotions. And so this is obviously a kind of a rich area. We all have emotions, right? We all have emotions. We actually, as human beings, we have access to a wide range of emotions. A lot of people have repressed a lot of emotions for a lot of reasons. Maybe they were taught this when they were really young, not to have these emotions, or they find these emotions very challenging. But along with some of those emotions, some people have repressed emotions for compassion and kindness, and they don't think it's appropriate to have these positive emotions. And so some people have kind of like taken this wide palette, like a painting palette of paints, and just kind of like said, oh, I can't have that color, I can't have that color. Before you know, they've got like 3 colors. And so what we're going to do in mindfulness is to kind of like look at these emotions, since they are real. They show up in our meditation. They show up in real life as we walk around. I'm sure you've experienced some emotions which are very challenging, and some emotions which are very beautiful. And we want to understand how we do this within the context of meditation. And then, as usual, we're going to take these, whatever we learn inside meditation, we're going to apply these same ideas when we are out in the outside world. So nothing I'm going to talk about here, it can't be applied in the outside world. You might not be able to do it, in certain contexts, in the same way that you can't, like, if you're in my digital marketing class, and I'm asking you a question, you can't go into meditation. I'm asking you so there's times when it's like not appropriate to kind of like go inward, but most of the time you have a lot of opportunities to actually look inward. So the way we do it in mindfulness is we actually use an acronym, and so I'm going to kind of like use the acronym to kind of take you through the process. And we use this because emotions tend to be very difficult and have a lot of complexity to them. And so think of what I'm about to do is to take you through a process to make them a little bit more systematic and a little bit more simplified. And so it's just a simple acronym called RAIN, and I'll just kind of spell it out for you. And so, so you have an R, and this kind of like, in a sense, is just to kind of like recognize. Just kind of like recognize, what this emotion is. Right? And sometimes we don't even recognize what these emotions are. Oftentimes, when we get these emotions, they come in, and we go, oh, there's an emotion, and I'm not even sure what it is, right? And so one thing that you can do is you can, when the emotion comes over, is you can stop and go, okay, so what is this? What is this? What is this emotion? Now, you don't want to make a big deal about recognizing, because sometimes what happens is you get a mixture of emotions. Anybody have a mixture of emotions where you just go, I don't know what this emotion, I feel something, but I just don't know what it is? Okay, so all you want to do is then just say, this is an emotion. That's it. We're done. So I'll give you an analogy, like have you ever, oil and vinegar. If you have salad dressing, you have oil and vinegar, and it's shaken up, and so it's like a mixture. You just put the oil and vinegar down, just let it sit, and let it be. The oil and vinegar will separate. In the same way, if you just let this mixture of emotions just be, it will separate. And so don't worry about it right now. The first thing is just recognize these emotions exist. Okay? So for some people, that is a practice in and of itself. Some people are just not used to recognizing their emotions, right? And so, so one thing you can do is, as you're kind of going through like a meditation and something comes up, you might just say, what is this? And just, oh, it's an emotion. So now you've just recognized it. Okay? And so the second word is A, so this just means accept. So we're going to just accept the emotion. Now, this is a very challenging thing for people, because if somebody has an emotion like anxiety is very prevalent in our society. I'm sure some of you have anxiety. The natural tendency when people immediately have anxiety, because this is the only way they know to deal with it, is to somehow get rid of it. Right? Don't you all want to get rid of your anxiety? Yes. I don't like anxiety. So we want to immediately get rid of it. So we immediately say, let's get rid of it. That's not accepting it. Right? That's not accepting it. So mindfulness actually gives you actually, this is quite a radical way of dealing with your emotions. This is probably the biggest thing that when people come to mindfulness, that they go, really? I'm supposed to accept these emotions? And the answer is, that's exactly right. Accept the emotion. So I'm saying after you recognize the emotion is to accept the emotion. Okay? Now, just so you know, as a kind of a practical matter, we have a fair amount of information that when you have an emotion, that the emotion itself is kind of a chemical reaction. It takes about 90 seconds for it to dissipate. If all of you, when you had an anxiety, you can actually check this out. I did this yesterday, and so I'm going to have you try to do this week, is when some anxiety or some emotion comes over you, if you can just sit there and just accept it, and don't comment on it, and don't do all the things you normally do, it takes about 90 seconds, 2 minutes or so, and you'll find the emotion has moved along. It'll actually dissipate. The reason why people don't experience that is because when they get the emotion, they don't let it be. Instead, what they do is actually the opposite. They kind of like, it's kind of like being in a skid on snow. You immediately turn the wheel the wrong way, and you go into a crash as a result of that. You have to train yourself to actually turn kind of like into the curve as compared to away from it. So your intuition is to go the wrong way. So what you're going to be practicing this week is kind of like turning the wheel the right way. And that is that when an emotion comes up, the first thing you're going to do is just accept it. Okay? Now, just a couple of things about when you accept your emotion, that doesn't mean that you that doesn't mean that you don't want it to go away. It doesn't mean that you like the emotion. It doesn't mean anything about some attitude you have about the emotion. What you're doing is you're saying, right now, even though I don't want this emotion, this is the emotion that I have. So you're actually doing something that sometimes we call radical acceptance. This is radical acceptance. Okay? So that's the next thing. And then we go into like I, which is to investigate. And when we say investigate, we don't mean like, let's do an intellectual understanding of this emotion. I want to understand like why I have this emotion. I want to go and talk back to my parents and kind of work out these issues that I have on this emotion. Mindfulness is about the present moment. It's only about the present moment. Why you have this emotion is not important. Okay? So I'm going to give you a lot of freedom right now. You don't have to, the one thing that you do not have to do is to understand why you have this emotion. You spend most of your time, most people, what they do is they have an emotion and they immediately go into thinking and try to understand like why I have this, how it created it, and all these sorts of things. I'm going to give you the freedom. This is the freedom of mindfulness, is that you don't have to do that. What investigate means is to bring that emotion into your body. Investigate it in your body. What are the sensations that emotion has inside your body? Okay? So like for me, when I'm anxious, I get this kind of tension that I get across my chest. Just the way I experience anxiousness. You might experience it in a different way. So when I get anxious, I immediately, I will start by saying, okay, so this is anxiety, and then my attention goes immediately into my body. How do I experience anxiety in my body? Okay? Does this make sense to everybody? So we're going to expand on that in a second about the investigation. I'll take you through another way of kind of investigating. But the key thing here is get in your body. The reason why, and you learned this last week, what happens to those sensations when you are doing a body scan? Does anybody remember? Like look at a sensation. What are those sensations? Tingling, vibrations, right? Kind of like temperature changes. Those are the sensations that you're experiencing. Those are the, maybe tightness or something like that. That's the emotion. From the sensation experience, that is all you're experiencing. And that turns out to be a major insight the more you practice this. Because what you'll realize is these emotions that are taking over yourself, and you kind of like go through all of this trauma with, are really nothing more than just kind of things that happen. It's an event that happens. It's these body sensations that you're experiencing, and that's it. That's all it is. And so the last thing is N. And this means that we identify with the emotion. And so what I want you to do is I want you to like imagine emotion. Just think of an emotion. Let's use anxiety, because all of you guys have anxiety in this. And so I want you to experience what non-identification is like, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to close our eyes, and I want you just to close your eyes right now. And then what I'd like you to do is just kind of say the words to yourself. I am very anxious right now. I am very anxious right now. See what that feels like. What does it feel like to say, I am so anxious right now? Now say it this way. Anxiousness is just like this. Anxiousness feels just like this. Or, this is what anxiety is like. Okay, so just open your eyes. And do you see a difference? In one situation, you brought your I into it. This is about me, I. When you bring the I into this, what you're doing is you're bringing this whole history on top of this emotion. Oh yes, here's anxiety. I'm always anxious, right? I've been anxious for years, or this is all about me, etc. What we're training people to do is to basically say, this is really not about you. This is an event you're having. This is an experience you're having. And that experience is just like this. Anxiety is just like this. And so even the language that you're using in a mindfulness context is very different. Okay? So before I go on, are there any comments or questions that you have about anything that I've just said? Straightforward? Cool. Yes?
Is it important to feel emotions when you're going through? Like, is it something that's helpful, at least in some situations?
Yes, of course. Emotions are important things. They're in a lot of ways they're beautiful expressions of ourselves. The emotions that we're talking about, and this is I'm glad you brought this up, are usually the emotions that cause people problems, right? It's the emotions of anxiety. It's like love, for example. It's a beautiful emotion. You want to feel passion. Emotions. The kind of work we're doing here is really to focus on those emotions that get in the way. They get in the way of like your creativity, right? Like all of this, all the emotions associated with self-judgment and fear, and these sorts of things get in the way. And so, what we don't want to. The goal of mindfulness is not to get rid of our emotions. The goal of mindfulness, especially in meditation, is to be open to all of our emotions. In fact, we want to open all of these emotions. So when I say to all of you, recognize anxiety, and then just be present and relaxed and accept the anxiety, is really to say that I'm going to honor these emotions. There are these emotions that I'm experiencing, and in so doing, I'm letting those emotions, there's a word there, motion, I'm letting those emotions do their thing, which is to go into motion, to move along. What's happened is a lot of people, when they see the emotion, they get afraid of it, they tense up around it, they block it. In a sense, what they do is they take an emotion that wants to move and they keep it from moving. They kind of keep it there, make sure it's there. And you've all experienced this, right? Have you ever had anxiety and then kind of push the anxiety away and it's gone for good? No more anxiety? Probably comes back like an hour later because you just blocked it. And then once you're just kind of like relaxed for a second because you just found yourself in a situation, up it comes again. Mindfulness says, okay, why keep doing that? Let me give you a different way. Just be present for the emotion. The emotion will kind of like go through and express its thing, and it will allow other emotions to come. So I'm saying this is a very important practice to do. So another way to kind of like investigate is and so this is kind of like a way to kind of unpack this, is to understand your experience as these emotions, and then you have these body sensations, and then you have kind of like thoughts or thinking that's going on. So this is like your experience, right? Isn't this like your world? Like you walk through the world and you have body sensations and you have thinking that's going on and then you have these emotions going on. Well, this is a very complicated world to kind of like be sitting in. And so one way that we can kind of like investigate this, and this is why I'm bringing this up because I want to take you through an exercise on this, is to kind of unpack this. Is to say, when we experience these things all together, this can be kind of overwhelming. But what we can do is we can look at the emotion itself, and then we can say, okay, so what are the sensations that are associated with that? What are the stories associated with that? And in so doing, what we're doing is we're kind of like deconstructing this kind of overwhelming experience of like, I have such anxiety, I've got all these thoughts about anxiety, and I'm tensed up about anxiety, and it's all this is like what gets people, where they get overwhelmed by it. This gives us a chance to kind of like take this, kind of like a ball of thread that's all tangled up and say, let's pull out this strand, let's pull out this strand, and this strand. Okay? So let's try it. And so what I want you to do is I'm going to ask you to be thinking about some emotion that you had this week. Okay? And we're going to do this in meditation. It's going to be pretty simple. Don't take the most challenging thing. We're not trying to do the Olympics of emotions here. We're not trying to do some major event. Some challenging emotion that you had this week. It might have been with some person that you were talking with. It might have been with a professor who you were talking with, or a friend, or anybody, or just circumstances, right? Emotions come from all these different places. And then just let me just guide you through this, and it's very simple. So we'll just close our eyes, and what I'd like you to do is just spend a moment just getting in touch with the emotion that you had this week that you might say was challenging or difficult, and then see if you can remember the situation you were in, maybe remembering the person, if there was a person. Maybe it was just a text message you got, or however you're communicating. And see if you can get in touch with the emotion that you experienced. Just see this emotion. See if you can just lightly accept the emotion as it is. And now turn your attention to your body and just notice how that emotion is being expressed in your body. Where in the body does this emotion get expressed? Is it in your face, shoulders, stomach, back, legs, wherever? And if for any reason you find it difficult to find the sensation in your body, then just notice that. And so bringing your attention back to the emotion, now I want you to just think about what motion or behavior does that emotion make you want to do? Does it make you, for example, want to shout? Does it make you want to hide or cower? Does it make you want to run away? What behavior does that emotion make you want to do? And now bring your attention up to your thinking. What kind of stories do you have associated with that emotion? Is there some kind of repetitive stories or things you want to say to people or conversations that you think about? And then now bring your attention back to this emotion. So now we have this emotion, makes us want to do a behavior, we have body sensations, and we have thinking. Okay, so then just take a deep breath and then open your eyes. Right. So, does anybody want to share a little bit about like the body sensations that they had for whatever emotion they chose, their chosen emotion? Yes.
It shows some sort of frustration.
Okay.
The scenario I sort of focused on was biking on campus and having people in the way.
Yeah.
Just like having a place to go and being
Right.
frustrated with that.
And so, what are the body sensations that you experienced?
Mostly a tightness in the chest.
Okay.
And a little bit in my head as well.
Okay.
A little pressure there, just like wanting to lash out in some sort of vocally or.
It's a lashing out,
Yeah.
kind of outward sort of a thing. And do you have stories that go along with that? The thinking.
Mainly just biking on campus.
Right. But it's nothing like, oh, this is unfair. I have this kind of thing as unfair, which people should be doing this, people should be spending time getting out of my way, or whatever. Right? Anybody else? Yes.
I think of a mix of nervousness and anxiety.
Right.
Not fear, but
Nervousness and anxiety, very common. And how do you experience it in your body?
it's kind of like when you get butterflies from excitement.
Right.
But immediate,
Yeah.
like in your stomach, but not happy yet.
Right.
Looking forward to that.
And so when you have this emotion, so what is the motion? Like when I was giving you the instructions, I said, what does it make you want to do when you have this kind of
Feel less anxiety and sleep.
Right.
Got everything else.
right? So this is like I just want to go to sleep and et cetera. And then is there thinking that goes along with it?
Kind of just about like really what's causing it.
Right,
But I'm trying not to think about it because it just keeps causing it.
right. Is there any? I mean, is there? I know you try to not think about it, but and again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to kind of understand, like this, are there stories that come up, or some kind of stories that come about this situation of having these butterflies, or this feeling.
Like examples like after finishing a test that I know I did really well.
Right.
Just like not
Okay.
looking forward to getting the results back, but you can't get anything.
Right. There's a lot of uncertainty associated with these things. Okay. Anybody else? Yes.
I mean, personally, I couldn't identify with any emotion that had happened in the past.
Yeah.
Like, I just couldn't do it. Didn't feel anything.
It's all right.
Couldn't get the emotion back.
That's all right.
I just couldn't.
And a lot of times, like when I'm doing this and I'm talking to people about emotions, people won't, have emotions, and so I wouldn't worry about that. If you don't have any emotions for like an extended period of time, then it might be worthwhile to investigate. But my sense is that it's more kind of like temporal, that you happen to be in a situation. But what I'm trying to give you is how do you deal with these emotions? How do you deal with these emotions? Now again, think about like the way we're talking about dealing with these emotions and the way you typically deal with these emotions. So the typical way that people deal with these emotions is they don't like the emotion. They repress the emotion, or they express the emotion. Some people, when they have these emotions, they express them. Anger, for example, they yell at people, they act out in some sort of a way. Or they go the opposite direction, which is that they repress these emotions. They say, I'm not going to talk about it, I don't want to deal with it, and they kind of push it away. Mindfulness is taking a different approach. It's in the middle between those two. So if you have anxiety, for example, mindfulness would say, can I just be present and relax with this anxiety? Okay? Just present and relax. So I want to tell you a little story so that you understand what I'm asking you to do. A number of years ago, I actually was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Fortunately, I was here at USC, and it was a non-cancerous brain tumor, but it was a brain tumor nonetheless. And they shaved off my mustache, and I was up at the Keck Center, School of Medicine, and for 4 days, I was having this tumor taken from my brain. And when it was all over, I ended up with this major case of anxiety. I never experienced this before. And it was always related to going to see a doctor. Just the idea of going to a doctor. I'd have to make a phone call, to make a doctor's appointment 3 months in advance. From that day on, just even to make a phone call was so anxiety producing. And then, of course, every day I would say, oh, there's like 89 days until I see this doctor, 88 days until I see the doctor. I mean, I was a mess. I was really a mess. And it was around that time that I came to this practice. And I heard somebody give a talk about mindfulness, and I went, you've got to be kidding. I'm supposed to be present for my this anxiety, right? And so I did this kind of crazy thing, by the time I would get in the doctor's office, which is like, this is like at the cancer center where they're like taking scans of my brain to see whether or not the tumor had come back. Really crazy time. I'd sit there, on the edge of the doctor's, the examination chair, and I would sit there and I would go, this is what fear is like. It's just like this. And I would just practice being present and relaxed as best I could for this amazing amount of fear and anxiety that I had. And by doing that over and over and over again, and I had a lot of chances because I had like 90 days of practice leading up to it, I got rid of this anxiety. That's how I got rid of it. It wasn't by repressing it. That wasn't the path. That wasn't the path at all. It was by being present and relaxed with the anxiety. So do I experience anxiety these days? You bet. In fact, yesterday I was sitting there, it wasn't anxiety, I was sitting there at my computer at home, and I recognized that I had this emotion that was coming up. It was a frustration. I like to talk about frustration. It was frustration over something that from somebody else who said they were going to send me an email to confirm something, and they didn't do it. And I'm sitting there at home on my computer. I'm sure you can all relate to this. And immediately this thought comes to mind. Why didn't they do this? And all of a sudden I see my frustration, I see the frustration go higher and higher. And then I immediately went, okay, be present. I just closed my eyes and I said, this is frustration. This is frustration. A minute later, I wasn't frustrated. I could feel, you can actually feel, all of a sudden this level of frustration just go down and down and down, and then all of a sudden it's gone. And then you just, you move on. That's the mindfulness approach to emotions. Okay? So any questions about this? Because this is a major part of having a mindfulness practice. Next week we'll talk about thinking, and thinking is very much related to this, but I just want to give you kind of like an important way that you can think about what we're doing here. So I'm going to draw kind of a pictorial diagram of stuff that we're dealing with. So this is picture day here, and so I want to think about, like, this is like the breath, right? And then around this is like the body, right? So the first week we did this, right? I just had you look at breath sensations. And then last week I had you expand that beyond the breath sensations to all the body sensations, right? That's what I did. In this realm, which is like a solar system, we have emotions. And notice what we're doing. We have these emotions, and the first thing that we do is we say, how are these emotions expressed in the body? Right? And so they have a body. And if you actually have these emotions and there's tightness, what you can do is you can breathe and reduce the tightness just by using the breath. And then around that, and this is really the way, is thinking, which we'll do next week, right? Here's the way most people experience emotions, is they have the emotions and they go this away. They start thinking about it. The problem with that is that when you have the emotion and you start thinking about it, the first thing that happens is it spawns more emotions, right? Have you ever had that experience? Have a little frustration comes in. I'll play it out for you. Frustration comes in. You just notice frustration comes in. And then all of a sudden, you say, why am I frustrated? Oh, I'm frustrated because such and such incident happened, such and such. Now you've got anger. So now we throw in a little bit of anger on there. Now we're roaring up the fire. We're really getting this going here. And now you say, well, why am I so angry? And you start thinking about all these things that happen that make you angry, etc. And then you throw another log on the fire. And before you know it, you've got 3 emotions that are going. Right? So you got a big bonfire. I'm sure you've all experienced this. By the time you're all done, you've started off with a simple emotion, and the next thing you know, you've got a whole conflagration that's going on. So here's the way out of it. Here's the way out of it. When you have the emotion, don't go that way. Don't go that way. Drop that. That's not going to, that's not, that, all that's going to do is give you more problems. Go this way. Go this way. Bring it into your body. Bring it into your body. That's the lesson of mindfulness. All right? Okay, so before we end, I just want to see if there's any questions. I'll be around for a few minutes after our class. What you'll get is you'll get an email from me, and in the email will be a link to the website where there's audio. There's an audio called Mindfulness of Emotions. My suggestion is you download that. That'll give you instructions for this kind of like RAIN approach. You can listen to that, use a guided meditation, just kind of go through that so you kind of like understand like how this works. And then you can just do a daily meditation. So to summarize how where we are right now. I'm bringing my attention to the breath. That's how I do my meditation. If something more compelling comes along that keeps it hard for me to have my attention on the breath, I make that the object of meditation. Last week, it would have been a body sensation. So that would be. This week, if the emotion comes along and it makes it difficult for you to keep your attention on the breath, make the emotion the object of meditation and recognize, accept, investigate, and non-identify. Next week, when we get into thinking, we'll make thinking the object of meditation. Okay? All right. Thank you all. Thank you for your practice, and I'll see you next week.